before we start the Carr Chat, we are going to do a short presentation of a nice award that we got from Sisters in Crime. And so I'm going to turn it over to our guest author today, who happens to be a member of Sisters in Crime. This is Kate Carlisle.
Hello, I'm honored as a member of Sisters in Crime. We have a project where we give special libraries checks. And it's supposed to be used by mysteries. Maybe a romance one. But anyway, I'm very pleased to present this check for $1,000. Whoa! Sisters in Crime to the Henderson libraries. Yay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay.
So here we go. Kate Carlisle, who you just met, is a well-known romance and mystery writer. She serves two masters. This is not unusual for a writer in one genre to be publishing with more than one publisher, especially if they're really prolific and they have a lot of work to sell, and their primary publisher isn't publishing them fast enough. However, it is quite unusual for an author to be writing in two separate genres with two separate publishers. And Kate's going to tell us a little bit about that, but first, I want Kate to run you through her background, her history, and her long struggle to get that first call. Can you take us through it?
Have you been reading my website?
I have.
Well, it took me about 20 years to publish my first book. And I've been writing for about 10 years before I learned and found out what I needed to do. I was writing in free-flowing nonsense and, I don't know what I was trying to do. But then I started taking classes and getting very serious. And I got an agent. I went to conferences. I was networking with other authors because it's kind of a lonely world in your room with your pajamas on there. So once I started networking with people, I got an agent, and they started sending out my books, and I was getting good rejections, which is just a horrible term, good rejections. And one of them said, I really like this, I like her style, I like the characters, her writing is good, the dialogue is fun, but there's no hook. And it was a murder mystery, but there was no hook. And I did not know what that meant. And my agent told me what that meant. And this is after like 15 years. And there's so much that you need to find out that you don't know until you just go through it, Anyway, I found out what a hook was. It's a marketing term in mysteries. It's the crocheting, or it's the recipes, it's the books, it's the librarian, it's Carolyn Hart's bookstore. So a reader reads her books to learn about the bookstore and they read it for the characters, but the bookstore is what draws you in the first place. So I thought, okay, I'll show you a hook. And I kind of searched my life for something that interested me. And I'd taken bookbinding classes and all that, but I didn't even anyway, eventually I thought, bookbinding, a bookbinder, and the mystery is in the book that she's working on. And that idea sold in 3 weeks. And the rest is history.
But and also what she's not telling you here, and you'll find on her website, was just the day before she got the call, she got the best haircut of her life. So she thought maybe it was the haircut all these years, because she went home and the phone was ringing, and
I'm sure that's what it was. I've struggled with my hair all my life. And every time I go to an event like this, I want people to tell me about my hair because sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Today it's bad, I don't want to hear about it. But it's always an issue. Oh my God, it's a hair. And I was looking, when I was doing my website, I went through all my pictures, because you want to do a little bio page. And every picture had a different haircut. I mean, I had like dark hair with curls.
I saw it.
It was
you
crazy.
Hair out to here.
It was, yes,
Where did
crazy.
you get that?
I used little straws and because my hair stood straight. I always wanted curly hair. It was straight. When I was in 3rd grade, my mother gave me this haircut. It was so awful. That's on there too.
I know, but I gave my daughter that haircut, so I kind of glossed over it. I'm still hearing about it. She's almost 40, for God's sake. She'd think she'd give it up. But I did that. She said, it looks like you put a bowl on my head.
That's what it looked like. It's horrible.
It was nice and easy.
Yeah.
And I did it when she was in the bathtub. Oh, still. You know?
Oh my God. Yeah, just give her a little distraction.
Okay, so the first one was a mystery.
Yes.
So how does romance fit into this scenario?
Well, I had grown up with mysteries, and then all of a sudden I discovered romance. I discovered it late. I came to it very late in life. I didn't even know there were romance novels. That's how crazy I am. I was totally
Did you
into
ever
mystery.
read romance with a flashlight in here? I mean, I was supposed to read.
That was Peyton Place and Lady Chatterley's Love.
That's right. Oh, Lady Chatterley's
You
Love
know-
really was a dirty book. I loved that book.
You know what I read were like Hollywood Wives, Jackie Collins
Just not really.
Judith Krantz and that, but they weren't
Those aren't really
romances, but they were appealing. But I thought I should be writing mystery, and then I was a Sisters in Crime member, and some members of romance writers came to our meeting, and then we were going to go to their meeting. I went to their meeting, romance writers meeting, and it was their birthday celebration, and there were like 100 raffle baskets. I won 2 of them. They were so savvy and smart. They were dressed to the nines, So I thought, well, romance writers are very, very cool. So I joined RWA, Romance Writers of America, and started writing romances. And my agent fired me. I can't sell romance. It's an old guy in New York. So, but I stuck with romance, and then suddenly I sold a mystery.
I have to tell you a very funny romance writer's story. In San Francisco, at the hotel, the romance writers were holding their convention, and this is not a small group. There are 3,000 of them, and most of them are wannabe writers, and they're not published. And they were also holding a Mary Kay convention at the same hotel. And there was a really long cab line to get out of the hotel to go out to dinner. And one of these Mary Kay ladies said, all these damn romance writers, they all think they're Nora Roberts. And a woman said, well, I am Nora. You, back of the line. So, you got a new agent.
Yes.
And you were able to convince this new agent to sell both romances and mysteries.
Yes. Well, I wrote a romance, but people died in the romance. So I couldn't really get away from it. Even when I wrote romances.
You have to be very careful who you kill.
So she liked the mystery part of the book. And so she encouraged me strongly to write a mystery. So that's when the hooks came in. Thanks.
But you still wanted to write romance.
I did, yeah. I loved it. I loved it. That's what I read. I shouldn't say that. There's a bunch of mystery writers here, or mystery readers. But I loved reading romance.
Right.
But meanwhile, I was writing mystery.
And am I right about this? Romantic suspense is kind of born out of a combination of a suspense novel and a romance. But people don't write mystery romances, do they? There's never a romance, a significant romance in a mystery, is there?
No, well, mystery readers, I mean, I have a romance in mind.
I'm hearing names out
And
there.
a lot of, well, like Stephanie Plum, you know. But it's not really a romance, there's two guys, you know. She goes from one to the other every other book.
Yeah.
I mean, I like that, personally. But you wouldn't call that a romance, and yet there's romance and there's attraction and you know, tension, sexual tension, all that kind of stuff.
Well, sure, there's attraction and a little, I mean, like Dorothy Canal.
Right.
Yeah, I read her, I was on a kick, a Dorothy Canal kick for about 5 years and read every one of her books.
Yeah, and she's got a guy in there that's really cute. And Carolyn Hart has Max Darling. So, and I have a romance in mind, but it isn't it's not the overarching idea. It's actually, they're partners now. After 7 books, they're good times. It was very sexy and sexual tension-y in the beginning, but I had to have a little bit of romance in my mystery in my romance.
And so is it good? Is it all right serving 2 masters? How do you keep up with this? How do you balance it?
Well, it's a little tricky. The romance is always 2 points of view. Just in the basic writing of it, it's tricky. The romance is 2 points of view, the guy and the hero and the heroine. When I go to mystery, she's in first person, and she's in my head. I always have Brooklyn in my head, and I sort of slip right into those stories. With romance, I kind of have to take a little step back and do a little more plotting and a little more setting up of things with the mystery, because it's ongoing and because that character is so close to me and her little secondary characters are very close to me. They're like my little family. Some people I like better than my family. But it's closer. I feel like I'm
It's like
her.
dressing up.
Yeah, it's a little closer.
It's like
yeah.
putting on a costume and dressing up and being that person.
Yeah.
In romance, it's sometimes hard to visualize being that character.
Sometimes in romance, it's easier for me to write the man's point of view.
Me too.
Isn't that strange? Apparently not.
Apparently not. I think women read my books for the men.
Mhm.
I think men read my books for the men.
Oh.
I think they're admirable characters, and they're strong, but they also have a sensitive side. And I like focusing on them.
Mhm.
And it's a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, and the books that I write, the romances, the desires, Harlequin desires, are very male-oriented, and by that I mean that if I do a trilogy, they're 3 brothers. Readers want to read about those 3 men and their relationships, and then their love story. But when I say it's sort of male-centric or hero-centric, I think that's what draws people to those lines, to the Harlequin.
Women read romance for men.
I think so.
I mean, I think
I
that
do.
books that have sisters in the title
Yeah.
don't make it as romances as much as books with the Buchanan brothers
Mhm.
in the title.
Right.
You know, but they're very hard. Readers are very hard on heroines.
Yes.
I wonder sometimes if they're jealous of the heroines. I mean, a tough, mouthy heroine gets a lot of criticism, but they'll forgive a man anything. You know?
Just like
Oh,
in
so
real
what
life.
if he hit his mother in the face? She deserved it. I mean, it's really interesting. And the heroines that it doesn't matter what kind of heroine, they'll be hard on her. She can be this wimp, this whiny, wimp, and they'll say, oh, she's just a whiny wimp. or she can be tough, and they'll say, well, she's a little hard-edged. You know, they're very hard on heroines, but they love the men. So,
Just like me.
you know, men,
I have 4 brothers. I think that helps me
well, it certainly helps you
zero
know
in
them.
on zero in on the male. Not just the relationship with the heroine, but more with the relationship with the. It's always 3 brothers for me. I'll get 3
So
brothers
which
and
one
then
of
their
your brothers
cousins.
did you want to kick the big brother? You had 4, but it's always 3.
I've got this one middle brother that's a little.
So tell us a little bit about your process. Like when you write, how you write. You have special socks in your pajamas.
I write early in the morning. If I've said before that if I check my email, I'm done for the day. I'm so easily distracted. It's really awful. But now I have a little smartphone, so I don't have to check my email on the computer. I have it right here by my little keyboard. It's just as distracting. It's terrible. So if I have to ignore all the outside things, I check it in the morning and I don't open it, but if there's something from my editor or agent, because they're in New York, so business has to be dealt with, taken care of. But otherwise, I write early in the morning, and I think it's because when I was working for many years as a legal secretary, I would get up at 5 and write until 8, and then go to work and be there at 10 or 9:30. And work till 6 or 6:30. But so I would write for those 3 hours in the morning, and I got a lot done. So I still try to do that. But now I get to stay home and write all day, and I still try to get it done in the morning. So that's the first thing, just on a daily basis. I have a group that I plot with. We brainstorm our ideas. We send each other our ideas. I mean, I usually send like a 6 or 7 page synopsis of all the ideas that I have for this next book. And what we do when we're together is we sort of fill in the blanks. So we'll fill in we'll hone in on the hero's conflict, the hero's goal, the heroine's conflict, the heroine's goal, why they can't be together and what they have to overcome. And it's more like usually we have filled it in for everyone, but it's honed down, and it's turning points and scenes, this would be funny if you opened it with this, and we'll write that. So that's very helpful. I go home and I sort of, we tape it. This is business, serious business. We tape the sessions, and we go home, write it out, and then I fill in my blanks, because in the ongoing mystery, I have secondary characters. They don't usually deal with that. We deal with the mystery when we're talking, what could happen, and other ways to get her through, and new ways where she's in jeopardy that don't have to do with cutting break lines and things that have been done a million different times. So I go home, I write it out, and I make a synopsis out of it and send it to my editor. And that's how that starts. And then when I start writing, I break the synopsis down into chapters and sort of
So you
write
do
it.
this just with the mysteries?
That's with both.
Oh, with both?
With
Okay.
both.
Okay, and you
Yeah.
plot the whole book before you start to write?
I plot the whole book before. I have to have the full plot.
There are plotters and there are
Yeah.
masters. People who plot everything out before they type, and people who don't plan anything. I would be one of those.
You'd be the
Hamster.
flying by the seat of your
Flying
pants
by the
there.
seat of your pants. Start on page 1
Wow.
and go. Just go.
See, I couldn't imagine doing that, and yet when I'm sitting there writing the book, that's what I feel like. I feel like I'm there without a net. I don't know where I am, and
You
I'm
are,
filling in
because
stuff.
those ideas, those later ideas, they don't all come before you sit down.
Right.
They come over the course of the 3 or 4 months that you're working. And you get to the very end of the book and say, wow, it would be great if there were a teenage boy in this book. And I can go back to the beginning and put a teenage boy in. And it would be great if this teenage boy's big issue was that he's being bullied, and I can do that. But people I know who plot ahead, they have to have that idea first.
I do, but I mean, I'll get halfway through a book and realize there's only 2 suspects. This is not very exciting. So I have to go back and, it just never comes up because with the plotting, you're plotting for an hour with people that you know and trust, and they know your characters as well. But you're just dealing with you're dealing with the mystery and how to overcome and how to face off the killer and that sort of thing. But when I'm sitting down, it's the real deal. And I do have to go back, and I had to add in a new suspect, and the guy that's threatening her in this scene, he needed a brother. I mean, it's just, and that didn't happen in plotting. That's happening as I'm writing the story.
The fine strokes.
Yeah.
Stephen King says, plotting ahead of time is like archaeology with a pickaxe. but if you're really doing both. You're plotting ahead of time and getting the fine strokes on the writing.
Yeah.
Now, Lisa, how many of you are there that do this plotting thing?
There's 5 of us.
That's a kind of a large group, actually.
Yeah. It just kind of clicked. And I was the newest member to the group. And I love it. And they're friends, so, that works out. And we meet in Vegas. Should I mention that? We meet in Vegas because everyone can get there. It's like all roads lead to Las Vegas, right?
Like Paris.
Yes.
Everybody will get to Vegas eventually.
Right. And so we have diversions because sitting in a room with, 4 people, and it's kind of intense. In fact, it's very intense. And if somebody's in a bad mood, it throws everything off. It's, there's a lot writing on this session. Plus, we're all, working writers, so there's money involved, basically. And so you have to depend on this. If somebody's in a bad mood, it's going to screw things up. So there's distractions. You go off and gamble, or go to the food court, go to, the hotel it's like the little mini city. So it's kind of fun.
Now, my 2 BFFs plot together, and they would love for me to participate, and I have no interest in it at all. So I have a plan. They're going to come to Vegas and plot, and I'll be in my office.
Oh.
Call me if you need anything. Call me if you need coffee or wine, and I'll be right back to call. But they can do that all they want, and it gets really intense. They get really tired, and it's just a kind of an amazing process to me. I don't think I've never done it, but I do run ideas by my editor or my agent and say, what do you think of this idea? But I've never had any interest in sitting down with a group and going over the details.
Yeah, I know, there's people who do something, every other way.
Ways.
Right. And I never thought I would do this, but I started out with a critique group. When you're unpublished, you get a group of people, and it's very helpful. It's very motivating. You have to show up with a chapter every week or every 2 weeks, and that got my first book written. Just having to show up. And this is different. This is sort of not on the beginning. This is sort of here, and then you start writing. But this was like back here. It was very helpful. It's very motivating.
I've been in critique groups before, and it can be helpful. It can be destructive. It depends. It really depends on the group, and if you have the right chemistry with them, Let's open up for questions. Does anybody have a question for Kate? If you don't, I can keep talking. Oh, go ahead.
How do you find a bookbinding class? I've had trouble locating something like that. How did you find classes?
I had trouble finding one in Los Angeles. But my brothers live in San Francisco, and I learned of a place years ago that I actually use in the book, except I call it a different name. San Francisco Center for the Book. And some cities have these, some of them are associated with the colleges. Some are associated, I finally found a woman in Los Angeles who does a book arts class, and she did it through a bookstore. And then she moved, and now she has there's a store in another part of town that does scrapbooking and paper. You buy, like the Paper Source kind of a store. And they had a class. It's hard to find. It's an odd kind of, it's not like sewing or crocheting or quilts or things like that, but it's sometimes they do it through libraries. But the class that I take in Los Angeles, the teacher it's a 4-hour class, and you come out with a cool little book, and it's usually a little gifty kind of a book. But it's all the same techniques. It's bound, and she'll throw a cute little something in there, like a little beaded placeholder. The one up in San Francisco is serious. These are artists who go there, and they do letter press, and they do all these other kinds of things. They make paper. It's just weird that you make paper from paper.
That would be kind of fun to watch, even if you couldn't take the class, wouldn't it?
It's really fascinating, and I have been doing it since I was little. I lived next door to a park when I was little, and they had these funny little classes. Pot holders and little book binding, and so.
I saw a question over here. Yes.
I was going to say that I don't read a lot of the romances, but I read a lot of mysteries. And I think that the women in the mystery books are strong, usually, don't you think? Intelligent, they sometimes they can be a little rough, usually smarter than the men in the book, So it sounds like a whole, don't you think, that it sounds like a whole different slant on women in the mysteries as opposed to what you're saying about the romances. Is that your experience or no?
I think so, but I think it's an interesting question. I write marketing term for it is a cozy mystery. They're traditional mysteries, and the majority of the protagonists are women, and they are in just normal life. They own a store, or they teach a quilting class, or they have a library, and they have special projects. But they're drawn into this story, and they are the only one who can solve this problem, and there's a reason for it. And there's usually a point where it's like there's a dead body, usually, and they have to solve this because their sister is going to be arrested, or their best friend, or the waitress their favorite waitress at the coffee shop, and she knows she didn't do it, and the police don't believe her. And so there's a point in the story where I don't want to do this, I'm scared, she has to make a choice, and she does have to be strong in it. She might not be a strong person particularly, but she has to take action. So it makes her strong,
In the cozies, they're almost always women, but who do I love? She writes those. She's American, but she writes British. With Lord Linley,
Elizabeth George.
Elizabeth George.
Yeah.
She's got a nice big family of protagonists. But I think that the key here is the emotional focus is different in every genre. In romance, you want your reader to feel desire. In mystery, you want your reader to feel curiosity and a real challenge to figure it out first. And then in a suspense novel, you want them flying by the seat of their pants. You know, so it's always a different emotional focus. And if the emotional focus is on true love, I mean, the key player in the whole true love equation is a guy. You got to have a guy to have true love, most of the time at least. So I think that's some of what's going on in our different genres.
Mm-hmm.
Do you go to Mountainous Domestic?
I do. Yes. Yes, those are die-hard mystery fans.
Yeah, die-hard cozy fans.
Cozy fans,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, I love it there.
Anybody else have a question? Yes?
Do you find a difference between the male reader and the female reader in how they respond to the female character who solves everything in the mystery?
I'm surprised to have, it surprises me when I meet a male reader who's a fan, just because I just don't, it's unexpected. And they're just as rabid and, you know, excited. And in fact, I was at a book signing last week, and the night before, Nalini Singh was there. Who's a romance writer, a paranormal, very intense, dark paranormal romance writer. And this guy is probably about 60 years old. He had my book, signing the book, and he goes, and he was there the night before, and he's talking about Nalini, and he had bought her book. And he's just a fan. He's a big reader. But the difference is kind of funny. I've gotten letters from men who read my books, and they always have a comment about a specific thing, like I mentioned, something about the Revolutionary War, and they want to solve a problem. It's funny. It's like a man in your life.
That's right.
You tell them, oh my God, something happened. Well, here's what you do. Blah blah blah. I mean, this is their letter. The letters to me. This is how you would do this. You should have done this. And it's like, oh my God, it's hilarious. Women are just writing, you know, I love this, you know, or, you know,
So
it's just different.
The critique of either the strength or weakness of the female is,
They don't care.
No, I never get a comment.
they don't even pay attention.
No, they're just
They
readers.
men love all women. My male readers love all the women, never have a criticism of the women, and they all think they are the man.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yes.
They all think they're Jack, and there's absolutely no reason to tell them the truth.
Because they are.
Because they're Jack.
As long as they keep buying the book.
Yes. And like Kate, I'm surprised when I get male readers, but over the past few years, I've gotten an awful lot of them, and it surprises me that they're very appreciative, and they do like to solve problems. They don't want to just listen.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to just read. They want to fix it for you. And if they can fix it, then they can go on to basketball. Question? Now, if I'm right about this, how many total books? 10? 12?
The 7th mystery just came out, and 5 romances.
Okay. So it's been real steady.
It had, yeah.
Romance, mystery. And you're
Yeah,
real
it's
happy
kind of
with
crazy.
this life.
I'm very happy.
And it's a good life.
It's a good life.
And you work in your pajamas?
I'm living the dream.
No.
No. I still have all my problems, and the house gets dirty and all that. But yeah, I do work in my pajamas, and I try not to, but you know, I just get into work and it's lunchtime and I realize I'm still in my pajamas.
And that happens to me every day.
Mhm.
Every day. I start in my pajamas, I get a cup of coffee, go straight to the computer,
Mhm.
and my husband is retired now, so he's kind of
there.
around.
Yeah.
And every morning he leaves to go hit balls or putt or do something, and calls me from the grocery store. What do you need? And So as soon as he calls, I make a dash. So he doesn't think some vagrant moved in his house while he was out.
That's what I do.
Uh-huh.
He calls, it's about 4 or 4:30, he calls, I'm on my way home, and I'm like, oh my God, the dishes are still in the sink, the coffee pot is still,
So you know, this retirement thing, this is really working for us. There's only one small problem, and it's very small, but I don't see it ever going away. He stands in my office doorway and looks at me until I say, "What? What is it?" And I think that's going to go on forever. Other than that,
Just checking
everything's
in.
fine.
Just checking in.
He always wants something. And standing there, he wants something.
I can hear you breathing.
That vein. Anybody else with a question? Yes.
Do you live in Vegas?
No, I live in Los Angeles, in Venice, by the beach. I mean, not on the beach, but enough that I get the ocean air. And so. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. It's very weird. I'm a strange person, but I like it there. I like my little corner of it. So. But I come here twice a year.
That's very
I love
intense.
it. It's very intense and very fun. Don't tell them it's very fun. I have a good time.
Question? Well, if you do think of a question, we are going to be here for a while. So I'll suspend our little interview and we'll sign books. You can get books back in the back. And Kate, I think all of yours are here, aren't they? Just about. It's a pretty good number of them. And I brought a treat today, a copy of The Newcomer, which is the next Thunder Point novel, and it's not out yet. But I brought 20 copies, so they're available if you're looking for them. So thank you very much, and thank you, Nate. It was a pleasure.